word, yeah. Consciousness is the philosophical word. Seer is a practical word. The sense of seeing I have. So that is Purusha. And Prakriti. So Prakriti is the seen, the absolute. So now, before I start, I want to just recap that what is Prakriti. We have done this before, but just since some of you may not have been there, just want to show you this chart. So the Prakriti here, has different evolutes. We call the Prakriti, evolves into what is called as the first evolution of Prakriti is Mahat or Buddhi, we say. So here is where this one, you see the number one on the left corner. So that means that is the first conjunction or the first contact of Purusha with Prakriti. So Purusha and Prakriti do not directly contact because they are both absolutes, they are both eternal, they are both realities. So now in this school of philosophy, the first kind of contact of consciousness, I has pure consciousness. The first contact I have is what we call Mahat or Buddhi. Buddhi, we loosely translate it as intelligence, but here it's a little difference because it's more of the universal intelligence. Okay, so in reality, we say universal intelligence, meaning we may think like, okay, there is a God and that this God has this cosmic intelligence and we're all part of this intelligence. So this is how some philosophies interpret it. But in a more practical philosophy, the interpretation of this is it is actually the universal ignorance. It is not so much the universal intelligence. Meaning we are all caught up in this common universal ignorance. We have consciousness been affected by this, what they call as the matrix. So we are all caught in this web of matrix. So we all have forgotten who we really are. And what this has done is that this has stopped creating in us a sense of wrong notion of who I am. So from this wrong notion of who I am arises what the first sense is ahankara, ego. So the ego arises because I have this universal hypnosis. So I was pure consciousness, I was this Chaitanya, I was of the nature of joy. And then what happens because of this universal hypnosis, I think that my joy is in the world. So, okay. This becomes ahankara. Okay. So then now what happens is, interestingly, from this ahankara, right, this ego principle, what happens, starts manifesting in my life as gunas, attributes. So I get this quality of being active, rajasic, or I get this quality of being dull, inactive, inert, or I get even this quality of being sattvic, meaning like I have uplifting, positive qualities. From that actually comes mind. So here we have to understand. So this concept of mind which comes, right, is different from buddhi, which we put as mahat. So the mind here is this mind which allows us to perceive. It allows us to gather knowledge, gather information through what? Through senses. And it allows us to feedback, give back that information through our active senses or motor senses. And then what do we perceive using these senses? We perceive all the subtle and gross elements which are made out of Pancha Mahabhuta or Tanmatras, the earth, air, water, space, and all that. So now what has happened is this, this whole process of hypnosis is complete. So we are now trapped in me, mine, and everything that I perceive, the world and all that. I start perceiving that. Okay, good. So this is just to recap. Okay. The reason I'm recapping this is because I want to first, before we go to the Yamaniyama, which we did last time, I want to actually go back to one of the sutras which I skipped. So this sutra is important now because also somebody had asked a question. And in order to explain that, the best way is to go look at this sutra first. And this is the Sutra 25. Before this sutra, he explained what is the problem. The problem, he said, is avidya, meaning ignorance is the problem. Okay, so what is exactly happening because of avidya is given in this sutra, which I want to go through in this class. So first I will read out the sutra. This is sutra number 25. Okay, and here he talks about what is the ultimate liberation. So this, from a yogic philosophy, we can take this as, when we talk about this, this is the ultimate purpose of all our lives. So we can say, from a yogic philosophy, if you were to ask somebody, what is the meaning of your life? This is the purpose of the life, purpose of life for any individual, from a yogic philosophy. And of course, different philosophies have different way of explaining this, but the essence is the same. Okay. So what is this? So I'll read out the Sanskrit part. Tad bhavat sanyoga bhavo hanam tad drishyehe kaivalyam. Tad bhavat, absence of that union. So what is this union? This union was described before. Anybody remembers what was the union which was described before?
Purusha and Prakriti. That is seer and the seen.
Seer and the seen union. So what he is now saying is, what is liberation? Kaivalyam. Kaivalyam meaning liberation, ultimate independence, ultimate freedom, where you're not dependent on anything else for your happiness. Your sense of true nature, true joy. Kaivalyam. Tad drishyehe, of the knower, that seeing, that force of seeing, which is created by this union of seer and seen. So it is like, when we say seer, it is not literally just the seer. It is the hearer, it is a smeller, it is a taster, it is a thinker, it is an experiencer. So everything is included in that, in the seer. So when somebody is recognized as the experiencer or the seer, then that what is experienced, it creates this triputi, meaning this duality becomes triad, meaning the duality of the seer and seen becomes that triad of seer, seeing, and seen. So there is this force of seeing which binds the seer and seen, and breaking this force of seeing is freedom. So now when I showed you the chart, what was happening in the chart is the natural evolution of most of us is we are going down. Meaning we first have this universal intelligence, and what happens, we get this ahankara, this meaning this individualized identity. I get trapped in me as an ego. So now what? Now I'm separate from everything else. Now I have to look after myself. And I have this, I slowly start developing this sensitive nature of self, and it slowly starts becoming an unhealthy sense of self. Meaning I move from what is a pure self to a slow identification that I'm independent. I need to take care of myself. So which is all healthy. But slowly I start moving into that I want this, I am this, I am better than others, I am special. So all this evolution is actually what we call evolution is actually a I don't remember the right word for degradation. You're regressing back. So it is opposite to evolution. So now what happens, then you're caught up in the attributes, the gunas. You start expressing yourself in all this, it has the habits. We identify ourselves slowly with these habits. I start identifying myself with my job. I start identifying myself with, who I am, who is my father, who is my mother. So all these identifications, the gunas start coming in. So what is the way back now? So the way back is that you go against what is called as a natural evolution. Okay, so here in yoga philosophy, that Darwinianism is not good, meaning what we are going about, what we are looking about is not the ideal. What we are trying to move here is we are trying to move away from that. We are trying to move away from that natural evolution. Okay, so that is what he's saying here. By absence of ignorance, there is absence of conjunction. And this leads to freedom known as absolute aloneness. Now, when we think of aloneness, in especially we think in a modern day context, we think of it as like almost like I'm lonely, I become lonely now. So this is a concept we have of loneliness, but this is not that kind of loneliness. So here the loneliness is that you are independent and you're not subject to Prakriti, you're not subject to your senses. Your happiness is not dependent on anything or anyone else. So this is that freedom, and that is called as enlightenment here in yoga. So in yoga, what is talked about enlightenment is not so much that thing about that me, getting all the things of the world, me having all the, like the jobs, or not even the powers. I can create anything at will. So those are all siddhis, we say, we can manifest anything I want. So those come naturally to many yogis, but they are still not interested in that. What they're interested in is that I have to be free from depending on anything or anybody or any object, time or place to give me that happiness. Desha, kala, vastu, time, place, object. These things cannot limit me. So this is the nature of enlightenment. Okay. So what is the means of enlightenment? I've already mentioned this. Viveka kyatir viplava hanopayaha. Viveka kyati aviplava. Aviplava means uninterrupted. A discrimination, a discernment that is not just when we are listening to the class. A discernment which is there in our daily life also. A discernment, a wisdom, knowledge that is reflected in our thoughts, words, and actions. So every day of our life, we have this wisdom available to us. And this is the means of liberation, he says. So this is what it is. How do you take out the ignorance? Through knowledge. So this is why we have to be careful when we talk about, and then he talks about the sevenfold wisdom. How does this wisdom manifest? In sevenfold ways. Okay. So there's one point here we have to also understand. How do we get rid of ignorance? So for example, right, in a more, let's say, psychological approach, if I have some problem or if I'm going through some issues and this has been resulted because of something I experienced in the past or some thing, some actions or something I've done. So all this in the past, we had experienced this. And so they say you have to undo that, you have to learn new behaviors and all that, right? So here in yoga, this one, the nature of wisdom is not that you have to undo everything step by step. The nature of wisdom is like how in a room that is dark, how do you get rid of darkness? You have to bring in light, So you don't have to beat the darkness away, right? You don't have to say this darkness is not good. I have to somehow throw this darkness out of my room. I have to figure out how this darkness came about. So this is like an endless pursuit. So then, like what we do, we sit with somebody, we say, is your room dark? Yes, your room is dark, my room is dark. So we discuss, okay, how do we work this out? But here, yoga principle is very straightforward. You bring in light and the darkness is gone, as though it has never been, right? Even if there was darkness for thousands of years, the moment you bring in light, the darkness is gone, as though it was never there. The moment that light is there, you can't even imagine this room was in darkness. Okay, so now we have established the ground, and so there are a couple of other points which I will relate it to this. But the main thing we are trying to understand here is that now Purusha wants to get back. Purusha is now what we call as evolution has come down to what is Prakriti. It has manifested as Prakriti. Now Purusha has to come back, come back. Okay, so now how does Purusha come back? He says there are 7 steps. We went through about 4 of the steps last time, meaning how the knowing, the knowledge, becomes stabilized. And through that stabilizing of the knowledge, all the samskaras fall apart, meaning the chitta vritti nirodha has happened. That state of samadhi has come. So all those previous habitual tendencies which gave me trouble, or all those, how he described suffering in 3 ways. Suffering is the suffering of change, suffering of our habits, and the suffering caused by obstacles on our path. So, of this, the most important one is yogis, the suffering of our habits, habitual thinking, habitual tendencies. This causes to get lost in obstacles. This causes us to misunderstand the nature of reality. That in the buddhi, the knowledge has come, meaning that sense of universal ignorance which is there in us as a seed. That has actually evolved backwards and realized that I am not under this hypnosis. I'm not this ahankara. I'm not this limited being. I am this nature of pure consciousness. So this is that 5th step and the 6th step where the buddhi dissolves itself, meaning it realizes that my purpose has been fulfilled, meaning I have worked this way back to evolution. Now that through this Purusha's conscious efforts and wisdom, I have now evolved backwards. And so that buddhi merges back into Prakriti, you can say, meaning it becomes inert again. It is no longer causing us trouble. It is no longer binding us. Then what happens? Then the Purusha realizes his true nature, and he realizes this is the 7th state of wisdom, where he realizes I am of the nature of happiness itself. I don't have to do anything or be something. I don't have to even get involved with Prakriti. So what happens now? So this is philosophical, right? So far, this is how the philosophical thing goes. So how do we practice this? How do we realize this? So for this now, he has brought out the steps of Ashtanga Yoga. Okay.